Last time we talked about the beginning entry of the Stalker series that encapsulates a feeling of dread and survival that was unknown to me in the video game world until I got a PC much later in life. Now we're moving on from the classic survival tale and pushing into the zone yet again as Colonel Degtyarev, a military stalker with prior experience in the wasteland. The game begins with a brief recap of the first, along with the real-life traumatic retelling of the event we all remember as Chernobyl. Right off rip, Call of Pripyat is different from Shadow of Chernobyl for many great reasons. In my opinion, this is the pinnacle of all three, and it resembles the core Stalker experience perfectly. No longer a mere virgin rookie in the small cordon village, the player takes on the role of a military stalker who's equipped with nicer gear and supplies than before. Granted, you're not invincible at the start, and you suffer from many similar issues as the previous game, but I'll get into that as I go along. The graphics are beautiful in every landscape, and throughout the series you'll find yourself walking back and forth an awful lot, but it's meant to encourage exploration, as this is the greatest way to find the best items. I wandered into this random shipwreck, for example, found an artifact of unknown origin, and on my way out some asshole tried to stop me and begged for the damn thing in the same way a Twitch chatter would beg their favorite streamer to talk to them. I said no, obviously, but the asshole had other plans. Him and his friend tried to jump me. This early on, the game teaches us that the zone is an unforgiving wasteland full of surprises and ambushes. I mentioned that the combat in the Stalker series is programmed to be tougher than the average shooter. However, this game feels much easier than SOC, which is a good thing. Be true that the gameplay itself still remains faithful to the first game, it is also a fact that it feels like an overall improvement. Movement speed and the basic controls are fluent and less clunky. The environment is absolutely pulchritudinous and still has miles of life-threatening dangers to discover in its decaying surrounding. I would describe COP as a refined sequel with all of the bells and whistles that come with such a label. The story is pretty damn interesting, and you see a whole new side of the zone that has evolved since first introduced to us players. We're no longer confined to a small village. The player begins with an assault rifle on their back, a box of ammo, 2 sausages, 2 cans of Tourist's Delight premium ration, a small caliber 9mm handgun, and a military issue combat knife, all within the large open range of 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙀. With each location marked on your map, the very first thing we're instructed to do is hunt down the crashed military helicopters in different sectors of the zone and determine how they met their fate. You can certainly spend a lot of time searching the highlighted areas on your map if you're looking for both a rewarding series of items and a proper challenge. What do you expect, to have everything handed to you? No way, man. Not in this series. With the open world enduring a unique mechanic known infamously now as A-Life, the zone is never a place of boredom or non-immersion. Enemy and friendly stalkers will fight far off in the distance and background, creating a dynamic experience for the player. You can greet roaming stalkers and ask them various questions along your journey. Some will offer helpful information like where to find a set of basic tools for the 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙀 mechanic, or question their knowledge about the wrecked helicopters. Some loners will briefly mention the accidents, while others flat out accuse you of being insane because vehicles of that magnitude are normally unheard of in the zone. That's just a nice little detail I wanted to mention. You have to wonder how many other stalkers would react in such a scenario. The disconnect between the social classes and factions has created a void of despair amongst the humans occupying the exclusion zone. Though there are constant moments of tension and anxiety, it's up to the Colonel to find out what happened and help others in the meantime. That's not only a good soldier, but a great main character. One thing I didn't bring up last time was the stamina feature. All 3 games have this mechanic, and it's pretty self-explanatory. The blue bar is your stamina. Monitor it closely and give it a full recharge after a few sprinting sessions, because even though it is super effective in the beginning of the game, there are lots of factors that'll deter you from keeping the same consistency as you fight your foes across the wastes. Consider your hunger. Food is not only good for the heart and soul, it's good for your character. It grants you a small boost of health and keeps your system in check. Finding clean water or an energy drink is also a must if you want to keep yourself energized. Using the typical energy drinks, the player can temporarily increase their stamina by a significant margin if they wish to make haste from a battle or just feel like running around like an idiot. I mean, it's probably not the smartest idea though, with the anomalies everywhere. I'd argue there's even more planted here than in SOC, because I find myself running into them an awful lot more than usual. Some of them are really easy to bypass, while others sneak up on you at the least expected time. Such is life in the zone, to have to avoid all of these extreme monstrosities. As a skilled stalker, it shouldn't be an issue to navigate the vast landscape and dodge the annoying obstacles in your way. That's why I highly recommend looking up a quick guide and doing lots of of exploration, quests, and stash hunting in order to get what you'll need for later in the game. Don't worry, we'll get there eventually. The quests are very engaging and can vary in difficulty just like the first game. You can hunt down a wanted stalker named Magpie, help a desperate man named Vano repay his debt to a crooked group of bandits, rescue another stalker named 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙩 from captivity, or act as a bodyguard in a deal that goes south. There's so many variables here, and you can be rewarded heavily as a result. Stashes in the starting location of 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙀 are lengthy in terms of collection, many of them are scattered far from one another, but the contents inside are essential to the kernel's progress. Trust me when I say you should try and spend a lot of time gathering resources now so you can feel some relief later. The main goal is to save up enough money to pay Pilot, a guide located in the Skadovsk. At first, he asks for 3,000 rubles to take you to Yanov Station, but if you complete the quest where you locate some travel maps, he will cut the price down to 1,000. Little decisions like that are what make this game so interesting to me. I like the freedom of the player's choices. You don't have to go through all of the bells and whistles in the way that it tells you, but can sometimes offer a new approach to a difficult situation. Imagine if more AAA games integrated this type of thing. Unfortunately, for a good chunk of time, you're walking the wasteland with armor that might as well be a plastic bag. The earliest armor you can buy at a decent price is the Barrel M5 armored military suit, for protection against most firearms. It doesn't do fuck all against highly anomalous areas, and there's no belt for holding artifacts though. Some moments like this come down to the player's decision. Do I save up for a new suit that will surely protect me? Or do I repair my fucking assault rifle so I can actually defend myself? Thankfully, one very abundant item that you can sell are grenades. They're not that effective against stalkers unless you're in a confined space, and they take up so much weight in your inventory that I never found myself using them. I consider every grenade like the Spinel from Resident Evil 4. It's just a convenient valuable, nothing more or less. Finding tools in the zone will unlock further tiers in the upgrade trees of your equipment whenever you visit a mechanic. Doing so will prove to be beneficial when it comes to fighting against tougher mutants and ridiculously accurate stalkers. You might think finding an assault rifle off of a dead stalker would guarantee you the advantage in every dangerous encounter, but you'd be wrong. Until you upgrade your gear and equipment, you're essentially shooting your enemies with a staple gun, so find some fucking tools. Some of them won't be available until you get to Pripyat way later on. Let me do you all a favor and take a huge step back though. You're probably wondering what the fuck it is you're supposed to do in this addictive gem. Simply put, after the helicopters are examined and Degtyarev meets with multiple helpful stalkers, he learns of an underground passage to Pripyat where he can regroup with his military squad, and hopefully find some answers. In order to pass through the Jupiter Underground, you not only have to find a strong armored suit, known as a 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙀 suit, you also need to recruit a group of fine men who are willing to sacrifice their life to get you through the tunnels. This process can take a long time if you're grinding out side quests, but it's worth it if you want to be able to have decent protection for the remainder of the game. Finding a suit for yourself is easy if you've been saving up money this whole time, but what about the rest of the guys that you recruited? Well, that's a headache and a fucking half. Yeah, I suppose now would be a good time to mention, you also have to find 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙀 suits for everyone you recruit to go with you to the underground tunnels. You could find one 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙧 suit that's hidden in a stash, but that's in Pripyat, which is inaccessible until you get through the fucking tunnels. Thankfully, if you continue to aid the scientists in the Yantar bunker, they will offer you an extra suit for one of your friends. After speaking to Sokolov, the only survivor from one of the Stingray helicopter wrecks, he will be given a suit by Professor Herman. This adds him to your group. That group is led by a man named Zulu, who has a really iconic introduction in my opinion. As you're explaining to him the severity of the situation and how none of you may come back alive, he simply celebrates with the Colonel by getting him drunk. It doesn't matter that these men are about to die. They've spent so long in the zone that they aren't afraid to help someone else find out the truth, if it means for a better future. Plus, the Colonel at this point has built up a reputation with all of the stalkers through side quests that he has been granted a lot of respect. Vano, the man you helped out with the loan shark issue, can also get a 𝚂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙀 suit if you're able to fork over $5 grand to him. It's much easier than having to find artifacts or repetitive stash hunting, so normally I just bite the bullet and give him the cash. The more guns in the underground area, the better. This is where I highly recommend you do what you can to stock up. The journey to Pripyat is long and hard, like 𝚂𝚃𝙁𝙀𝙁 coccyx. You're going to encounter a lot of different creatures in the tunnels, like snorks, tishkanos, and more fucking snorks. Things seem to be going pretty steadily until you're ambushed by a group of cultists known as the Monolith. Oh yeah, it's finally time to talk about one of the scariest factions ever created in video game history. The winter camouflage outfits and strange arm patches can only mean one thing. The baddest boogeymen of all time in the Exclusion Zone are here to kill you. Until you're dead. The Monolith are a deranged, brainwashed cult of stalkers that have only one mission: to kill all that oppose their views and take complete control of the zone by force. Even if they're outgunned or injured, the Monolith won't rest until they either kill you or you run far away. They worship strange towers of scrap metal that symbolize a monolith, and have an entire prayer recited for their crooked religion. They're such a mystery due to the fact that, if captured, they'll commit suicide against their will to prevent leaking information to their captors. What's even creepier is, Monolithians often use these zombified stalkers, let's call them drones, as a mere bullet shield or warning to anyone passing by. Chances are, if you see any drones wandering around the area of Pripyat, you're likely next to a Monolith hideout. Even though not much is known at this point of the Monolith, it is a confirmed fact that they're hostile. We were ambushed by the fucking lunatics, and unfortunately, Vano was the first to fall victim to their attack. The next one to go was Zulu, shortly after we had restored power to the underground tunnel doors. This led to more gunfights with drones and more snorks until eventually we begrudgingly climbed to the surface. The colonel meets with his new military squad and is escorted inside the laundromat. Sokolov and I were the only survivors. Now, let's talk for a minute about Pripyat. It's the toughest location in the entire game. Besides the Chernobyl power plant itself, which isn't featured in this one, there are hundreds of new threats to worry about, not counting Anomalous. The pseudo-giant is a massive ball of fat and flesh that chases you down like a pissed-off tow truck. It slams its heavy fists against the ground, stun-locking you for a solid 5 or so seconds. When it gets too close, it'll bite you and cause massive damage as well. The only way to kill them is to pray you brought enough ammunition and aim for their ugly faces. What about the Chimera? Not as common in this game, but when you do encounter one of these deformed mutants, you'd better be stocked to the brim with powerful ammo and armor. They can leap impossible distances, almost like a gazelle trapped in fucking space. If you can time their attacks just right, you'll be able to kill one without suffering so much as a scratch. If you're lucky. Oh, and by the way, best gun in the game? If you want my personal opinion, it's the SPSA-14, modeled after the real-life SPAS-12, a combat shotgun manufactured by Italian firearms company Franchi from 1979 to 2000. According to Wikipedia, the SPAS-12 was designed from the ground up as a rugged military shotgun, and SPAS actually stands for Special Purpose Automatic Shotgun, which I never knew. It is an extremely effective firearm with superior power and speed. It fires 12-gauge buckshot or slug shells from medium to close-range distances. Once it's upgraded fully, it's extremely hard to part with. Ammo is really common, and repairs won't cost so much after you've helped the mechanics enough. A close second would be the IL-86 assault rifle, modeled after the real-life L85 service rifle issued by the British Army since 1987. It fires 5.56 ammunition and comes equipped with a custom scope that assists with making accurate and consecutive shots on distant enemies. I forgot to mention this much earlier, but you aren't just stuck juggling all of this shit in your inventory constantly. You do have the option in each major area of the game to use a personal storage. Each and every time I come back from roaming out in the wastes of the zone, I take a minute to relax and store some things I found outside in the safety of my stash, where I can access it at any time later on. Some quests will reward you heavily by allowing stalkers to gift you things like medical supplies every day or so. Once you actually get to the laundromat, the mechanic inside will repair all of your gear for free. You don't even have to find him tools, for fuck's sakes. That's pretty cool. As I was saying, Pripyat's gotta be the toughest of all the subsectors of this one. I can't help but look over my shoulder every 5 seconds I spend roaming around the dead city, with its creepy ambiance and distant gunshots to fill the void. There are quite a few interior areas located in Pripyat, like the shoe store, which can prove to be a decent temporary safe spot if you need to eat and drink something in a hurry. Since the endgame mission takes place in Pripyat, I'd advise against continuing the main questline and traveling between Yantar and Jupiter to collect anything you might have missed. Stashes, weapons, food, and finish off any remaining side missions, as this is the finale of the game, and my final point for this video. It turns out that the helicopters crashed due to the emissions in the zone shifting the course of its anomalies periodically, making anomaly maps pointless. This is explained by the previous game's protagonist, Strelok, who you actually get to interact with. It's funny because when asked about what he discovered in the sarcophagus of the Wish Granter, referring to the ending of the first game, 𝙂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙩 lies to Degtyarev and says the Wish Granter is nothing more than a myth. In reality, players know from the first game it is real in its upstanding chaotic nature and a dangerous tool if put into the wrong hands. You don't see this mythical statue in this game though. The ending is full of amazing moments and outstanding battles. Like I said previously, Pripyat is a true test to the player's skill set. You need to be on top of your fucking game, otherwise you're gonna get hurt badly. The bandits, stalkers, and other hostile factions up until this point have nothing on the Monolithians. Armed with rare artifacts to increase their stats and well-developed weaponry, they're as scary as a horde of locusts and just as intimidating. They might as well be clones of Degtyarev. They have the same equipment, the same skills. It comes down to a full frontal assault from the monolith as you, 𝙂𝚃𝙰𝙧𝙯, and the others fight to get to the evacuation helicopter. It's tough, it's rough, and it makes you feel smaller than the rest of your squad, but goddamn it's satisfying as hell to gun them down. The bullets never stop flying here. Once that's done, Degtyarev and the squad make a break for the helicopters. The game flashes a text prompt at the player. This is the final choice. Do we leave the zone for good and see what happens? Or do we stay behind and bask in the glory that is the Chernobyl Exclusion Zone forever? If you choose to leave, you'll get a pre-credit cutscene very much in the same style of the original Fallout series, a recap of the events you've faced and the consequence of your actions. Thankfully, I played my cards right and ended up getting a really interesting yet satisfying end result for the future of the zone. This game really still is my absolute favorite in the series. You can choose the latter and stay in the zone indefinitely, completing side quests or exploring as often or as little as you wish. Having the freedom given to the player in this way is absolutely bold, and I love when we're allowed to keep going after the finale is completed. Not even New Vegas had this feature unless you download a mod. Well, that's Call of Pripyat. It's my most honored entry to the series, having possibly the most addicting gameplay and premise. I loved witnessing the struggles of the zone as a military officer who must adapt to the zone's harsh realities while trying to solve its very complex mysteries and help those in need. It's a game that I can't help but recommend over and over. Now, let's move on to Clear Sky, the third and final installment of the original Stalker series. Thank you guys so much for watching part 2. I'll see you all in part 3.
redfox.